Going live. Hey, folks, what's going on? How are you? Andy Campbell, Sean Fitzgerald, Jimmy O'Malley. We're back again. So, happy Tuesday night. We saw you briefly last week when the kids were signed, Oliver Moore and Sam Rinzel. And today we are back to talk about the second half of Jimmy's article, as well as some other things with the Blackhawks, giving them some letter grades. But a lot has been going on since then. First of all, fellas, how are you all doing? Sean, how are you? You're wearing a Utah hat? Is that a Utah hockey hat or just?
It is. It's a Utah Hockey Club hat tonight.
Why?
Because I like the logo.
They beat us.
Everybody's beating us.
Whatever. Well, so Sean is.
This team sucks. All right, everybody's beating us.
Sean is trading his allegiance.
That's not true. I could have wore a Winnipeg Jets hat tonight too. I've worn a Seattle Kraken hat before. It's fine.
And Jimmy, are you wearing a Minnesota Wild t-shirt, or do you just have other things on right now?
No, I would never dare do something so silly. I'm wearing a Screw City hat, represent the Rockford IceHogs, since we'll be talking a little bit about them. I bought this at a game last week.
Awesome.
So.
Very nice.
Thanks for buying me one.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
So, Bardo, what's going on, buddy? How have you been?
What a payday.
Fantastic.
Yeah. UMass is out, but they had a nice little run there, and they will be back, folks.
That was a trip.
Bardo's alma mater. Really good run.
It was a trip.
Anyway, let's talk real quick. The last time we were on the pod, we had kind of an emergency pod to talk about the Blackhawks' recent signing of Oliver Moore and Sam Rinzel, both Minnesota Golden Gophers, which is very exciting. They had their debuts on Sunday in the afternoon against Sean's new favorite team, the Utah Hockey Club. So Sean, why don't you start? How did they look, since you're a front runner now, supporting Utah and you only root for winners? How did they do? Talk to us about Rinzel. Talk to us about Moore.
So Moore was great. Had a lot of speed out there. Looked like he belonged. I had read today now there's talk of possibly using him on the power play later in the year. And I think that's a great idea. I was thinking that myself earlier today before I read that. His speed is just so impressive. And I can't get over how fast he is moving the puck up the ice. And then Rinzel, I mean, he was great. He looked like he belonged. He was smooth. He had that spin move, protecting the blue line there.
Mm-hmm.
He looked great. I think he's the real deal. And Frank Cervelli, I believe is how you pronounce it. I'm sure that's wrong.
Yep, Frank Cervelli.
Is predicting that he will not spend a minute in Rockford next year, Sam Rinzel. So that's a bold prediction. I hope it comes true. But yeah, I thought both guys were great. It was good energy. They looked good. I wish the outcome was better. Even though apparently Utah is my new favorite team, not a hat that I just wear. So
yeah. Well, so all really good points, especially the last one, and your new loyalties. Jimmy, what did you think of the fellas? Rinzel, talk about Cervelli's comment. I mean, normally we're kind of the mind that some of these guys are going to marinate in the AHL for a little bit. Do you agree with that? Do you think Sam Rinzel is just straight up NHL hockey player right away, or hard to tell?
I agree with half of his assessment. Frank Cervelli, I believe, is how it's said.
Cervelli.
A lot more syllables than you expect. I think Rinzel is fantastic. I think his game is very refined, and the only place where I think it could really get more refinement is at the NHL level. Now, he mentioned Oliver Moore, and he said he believes that he'll start next year on the Blackhawks opening day roster. Personally, I'd be shocked. That being said, he didn't close the door on him being in Rockford at all next year. So that gives me reason to believe that Omo might be up and down next year. But yeah, I mean, I think Cervelli hit it on the head with Rinzel. I think Rinzel is so refined, even at this young age, that the only place that really makes sense for him to grow is the NHL level.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Bardo, where are you with all this? And do you think there's a possibility Oliver Moore will be in the opening day lineup next year? And obviously, so many things will happen in the offseason. We really
I think he's going to get every chance. I think he's going to get every chance to make the roster. His speed is tremendous, a lot like Nazar. And if the two of them can figure out how to finish consistently, then you have yourself two, pretty good scorers right there. But Rinzel really impressed me. I mean, he looked the part of a number one defenseman. And what I thought about him after watching his first game was that he's fearless. Didn't seem like he was afraid to take a shot, wasn't overthinking anything. That guy.
Crisscross will make you jump.
Semi Rinzel. Sorry, keep going, Mark.
He just really looked the part, and I think he's a special kind of player. So for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are, Jimmy obviously loves Levchinov. I do too. Jimmy made a good comment saying, Andy, the way that you feel about Rinzel is the way I feel about Levchinov. Very, very true. Premium defenseman right now.
Mm-hmm.
They really have – the cupboard is pretty full with really good young defensemen, and it's hard to prognosticate who's going to be the most valuable out of the Vlasic, Korchinski, Rinzel, Levchinov mold right now.
If I have this correctly, they're both right-handed, so they're never going to play with each other.
No, they probably won't. Your two young right-handed shot defensemen are ridiculous right now.
So you literally have like two potential number one defensemen anchoring your top two pairs,
right?
Which is absolutely incredible.
Well, and that's going to help a lot for Korchinski's development too.
Yeah.
If he is, I think Korchinski seems behind these guys a little bit.
Yeah.
And not to say I think there's a lot of, who was it on Twitter that said Korchinski? Was it Al Samaglia that said Korchinski should be traded? Come on.
Al said it. That blowhard from Barstool said it.
Maybe if we're lucky enough, he'll get traded to Utah. But other than that, I just don't.
I don't have a Utah hat on. So,
all right, I'll stop. But at the same time, you can't give up on Korchinski right now.
No.
He's physically not as developed as the other two.
Yeah.
He's
still 19, 20, but yeah, like you said,
he's still younger than them. Yeah,
his body needs to fill out, and everybody develops at a different pace. He just needs some time. So
you've got young left-handed defensemen in Vlasic and Korchinski, young right-handed defensemen in Rinzel and Levchinov, and then you still have Wyatt Kaiser, you still have Ethan Del Mastro, you still have Nolan Allen, you still have a bunch of prospects,
and you brought in Taige Harding today on a 2-year deal.
Yep. So Taige Harding of the Providence Friars, 3rd-round pick, signed and was immediately assigned to Rockford.
On an ATO.
What's that?
On an ATO. He signed an ATO.
Oh, he's on an ATO. Okay.
Yep.
So even if and we did find out that none Moore or Rinzel are not eligible to play.
Correct. Yep.
In Rockford's playoff run. So how many more games are left in the season? Will they play enough games to burn up the first year of their entry-level contract?
I think it's 9 or 10 left.
I think they will, because I just read earlier today that Ryan Green, even if they win the national championship, they could get him in and he'd still burn his first year of his ELC.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And Levy just burned the first year. It's officially burned the first year of his ELC today, or last game.
Awesome.
And for those of you who are not familiar with Harding, I actually saw him play a couple of times watching some Hockey East stuff. Big kid. He's like 6'6", 6'7", depending.
Yeah.
What's that?
Huge, dude.
Yeah, huge. Weighs about 230. He is probably as clunky as a skater as you'll see. He needs to literally hire Dan Jansen and just work on his skating. But look, he's got that long reach that you would see and with a big guy. He's got a booming shot, literally puts all of his weight into it. But not really much of an offensive puck carrying guy. But again, that's part of the issue with him is his skating. So
he's Victor Svedberg, but younger.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to. He's a project, is what he is.
Number 53 on him or whatever Svedberg.
Yeah, to me, I think he's kind of a career AHL guy. May get called up if there's injuries, but I just don't see much of a high ceiling for him.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, either way, you need those guys.
Yeah, of course you do.
Pretty good. Yeah. So anyway, look out, folks. The youth movement is definitely on, and here we go. And it'll be an exciting last 10 games, at least just watching, the young kids kind of come along a little bit. We're not expecting a lot of wins. But in other news, Blackhawk prospect, their 19th overall pick, their second first-round draft pick in the 2024 draft last June, NCHC Rookie of the Year for North Dakota, Sacha Boisvert, is he's transferring to Boston University in a huge move which, yeah, thumbs down from Bardo, thumbs up from me just because I can go watch him play, being next door. And I also like the idea that third-round pick Blackhawks prospect Jack Pridham will be joining him as a freshman next year. Now he could be playing with Cole Eiserman. He probably will be playing with Cole Hudson. And will be on a pretty dynamic team. And there is a possibility that the Blackhawks will have a lottery pick that could end up being a college hockey player. I'm thinking of Michael Misa. You know where I'm at with this whole thing, Jimmy. If the Blackhawks do indeed get Michael Misa, and he's not NHL ready, which he might not be, he can go play college hockey right now. So the idea of him possibly going to Boston University to joining Sacha would be really, really cool. Now, I mean, this makes sense. North Dakota, they lost their coach after 10 years, blanking on his name. He leaves. I'm sure when the transfer portal opened.
Bradbury.
There you go. Bradbury?
Yep.
Okay. When Bradbury left, everyone on Twitter, every Blackhawk fan on Twitter or wannabe journalist says, oh, you heard it from me here first. Yeah, it takes a real genius to figure out that when a coach leaves, maybe players go into the portal at this day and age. You know who I'm talking about. You're out there. Anyway, Jimmy, what do you think of this?
I mean, I think it's great. We all know NODAC is a fantastic program and it has been for 10 years, but you want your prospects to have the best place to develop. And with a coach leaving, you don't really know who NODAC is going to replace him with. And
they did an assistant, Dane Jackson.
Jackson.
Yep.
So sure, they got their in-house replacement, but you never know. And these guys want to compete, and there may be some belief that North Dakota will not compete next year in the same way Boston will. And Boston University has, turned out NHL talent for decades.
Yeah, they just spit them out. That's ridiculous.
It's a great place to play. I mean, if you're not going to be a NODAC, I think the best place to be would be Boston University. And then being in a situation where you're joining Jack Pridham next year, and although it's not confirmed, I've heard basically just rumblings that if Misa were to go to college, BU is at that top of that list. So,
God, that'd be so cool.
That'd be so cool to have three Blackhawk prospects on one line in college. I mean, talk about gaining some what's the word I'm looking for? Chemistry that you couldn't get anywhere else. I mean, that'd be insanity. And then 2026, bringing them all up to the NHL or AHL, they all have an incredible amount of rapport. I mean, I don't think it could get better for the Blackhawks if that ended up being the case.
Yeah, I like it too. Fellas, you catching that Frisbee? What Jimmy thinks, Bardo? I know obviously he's not going to be in Amherst as a Minuteman, but at the same time, this is not a terrible thing.
He'll regret that part of it, but no, it's fine. I mean, I think also the NIL money probably played a role because I think BU is kind of got quite a bit of cash there to offer players. But yeah, I mean, look, good for him. And I'm curious to hear what you guys think in terms of what his ceiling is, given what his freshman year was. I mean, number 2 center in the league. I don't know. I'm asking. I haven't seen him
I don't
as much, but yeah,
he's super skilled. He seems more of a playmaking kind of guy. I mean, if you do end up getting Misa in the draft, then that might be your number 2 center, and maybe Sacha Boisvert ends up on the wing. But hopefully in a top 6 situation, his skill set and how he plays the game doesn't really translate into kind of the shutdown 3rd or 4th line.
No,
it's just not.
I think he's a 2nd line center at worst.
Right. I mean, he could be, but it could be kind of he could be on the wing or he could, we don't know if Connor Bedard might end up being a winger.
Yeah.
And so Misa or we're talking about Misa like we've got him. We should probably park that place. But Boisvert's the kind of guy, he's more of a setup man.
Yeah, he is. He is
what it seems like. He's very crafty, but I don't, like Oliver Moore could fill that shutdown center role eventually with that speed if he figures out the defensive side of it. I was communicating with Leon Hayward the other day. He said, everyone's excited about Moore. You're going to have a great player for a long time. He might not score a lot of goals because that just might not be his role. I don't know. What do you think, Shawnee? With Boisvert and the whole thing.
I think obviously leaving because of the coach, like regardless of your assistant on the staff, you're going to leave in that regard. If you think there's a better opportunity for you. As far as his future with the Hawks, it's an embarrassment of riches is what it is right now. Like assuming even if we get a top flight forward and one of them, they're going to have to mix and match because they're going to have so many potential guys in the top 6. And then maybe some guys become assets down the road where you can trade for something of need that you don't have. So you don't know. But I think he had 11 points in their last 9 games to end their season. So he was scoring. He had like
figuring it out.
Yeah, 2 goals and 9 assists or something like that. So he was putting up points. Maybe he is more of a facilitator, but you need that. And like you guys said, I know Connor Bedard is being moved back to center after spending some games on the wing, but maybe it is too much responsibility for him to be in the face-off circle. Yeah.
Darren Pang actually made a really good point that as he gets older and as other players who are a lot bigger than him get older, they're going to be obviously retiring from the league. And if you look at what the most of the number 1 centers are that are sort of around the 22, 23-year-old age, so maybe a little bit older than Bedard, they're sort of closer to his height and his size. And obviously he's going to get stronger. So he'll be probably more apt to playing center physically because of just the way that the size of the players are in terms of center. And as they sort of, as he grows a little bit older and as, players start to develop a little bit more of like who takes over the league, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that
makes perfect sense.
Makes a ton of sense. Awesome. Cool. Well, good stuff. Well, let's get to Jimmy's stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet, Jimmy, let's get to your article here. Where we left off, we finished off with some of the remaining Blackhawk regulars. I think we finished off with Arvid Soderblom was the last one that we touched based on. So, folks, number one, if you haven't read Jimmy O'Malley's article yet about giving Blackhawks roster grades and Rockford IceHogs roster grades, take a look. It's on the rink.com. It's in his socials. It's great stuff. So now what we're going to focus on are more of the back and forth guys, I guess you can say. Some of the players that have been down in Rockford, who are now on the Blackhawks, some that have started with the Blackhawks, like a Nolan Allen, that are now in Rockford, might not be coming back up the rest of the year, but have played roles on both teams, I guess you could say. We're going to start there. Jimmy, can you remind everyone of the criteria on why the grades and how the grades real quick?
All right. So quick grading criteria. Again, 2 main assessment points. It's objective output, subjective assessment. Objective output, as it sounds, advanced and counting stats. Subjective assessment, basically putting objective output into a lens of subjective criteria such as previous season's output, preseason expectations, age, contract, stuff like that. So that's the grading criteria. So the group we're about to do, since we went through the Blackhawks roster, I called it the Blackhawks / IceHogs roster. Mm-hmm. Criteria for this is simple: at least 10 games with both the Chicago Blackhawks and the IceHogs, and then the grading is cumulative between Rockford and Chicago. So that's where we are now in our grading.
Okay. Awesome. Perfect. Love it. All righty. So let's get right into it. We're going to go counterclockwise. We'll go Jimmy, then Bard, then Sean, then me. Bard, I won't skip you this time. I still feel bad about that from last time when I skipped over you. We're going to start with Jimmy. We're going to go Colton Dock.
You're actually missing someone.
I am?
Yeah, because a lot of Blackhawks fans are
players now. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Because the Blackhawks fans probably forgot this guy exists. I'll name him right now. Joey Anderson.
Joey Anderson? Did he play? He played 10 games with both teams?
Yeah, he started the year in Chicago.
I skipped him intentionally. Subconscious mind skipped Joey Anderson.
I'm sure a ton of Blackhawks
Freudian slip.
Let's go Joey Anderson.
Yeah.
Who Jimmy rated a C-. Tell us why.
The C-, the cumulative grade, it has a lot to do with how he performed with Chicago. 18 games, he had 1 assist with the Chicago Blackhawks. I mean, he was non-existent. He was given 2-year, $800,000 AAV. Mm-hmm. He was supposed to be that plug-in 4th line scorer guy, and he just, again, hasn't scored. I mean, if he was just a Blackhawks guy, I think he he would be on pace for probably an F. I mean, it was a tough season for him. However, his time in Rockford has been great, like legitimately really good. At the time of the grading, he had 30 games with the IceHogs and 25 points of 16 goals. I mean, he's an incredible top 6 winger up there in Rockford when, a ton of guys like Nazar, Slags, and Colton Dock were moving up and down. He was, a very solid force in that top 6, and he's been scoring at basically a goal every other game. The big thing for him also, he's gotten some injury troubles. Like he's missed this last weekend of games because of injury. So injury and just the inability to keep an NHL roster spot put him to a C-, but he's been really good with Rockford. He's been someone this forward group has really needed, which is, hey, it's good. You also have him in contract next year. You could keep him in Rockford. That'll allow Rockford to have a really solid top 6 winger going into next season.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Bardo, what do you say?
I mean, we hear this term in baseball, like a 4A player. That's like exactly what he is. He's a good minor league player, but he's not a good NHL player. Therefore, it's like, okay, he's an A in the minors and an F in the NHL. So let's take the average, and he's a C. That's what he is. So,
what Bart said, I'm shocked looking back at the numbers. He played 55 games in the NHL last year with the Hawks.
Mm-hmm.
That's astounding to me. Like he had 7 or 5 goals, 12 assists. This year he played 18 at 1 point. Like Bardo said, F in the NHL, an A in the AHL. He's a C.
All right, yeah, I like that. I'll go with that too. I'll go C, C-, just because I guess where I was really irritated is last year when the team was still pretty bad. Joey Anderson was getting a lot of hype. Like, oh man, he's great, and let's bring Joey Anderson back. And there's a lot of talk of what a great player, what a great attitude. He's really going to help with the rebuild. And it's like, come on, folks.
We need the people were saying we need him. Like they were distraught if they didn't re-sign him.
There was a 2-week narrative on Joey Anderson that was absurd, absolutely absurd. So I would love to give him an F.
I knew he was going to re-sign. But I didn't tell anyone out of respect for everyone else. So that's why I didn't.
All right.
Yeah, he was. He's an AHL hockey player. That's it. I mean, I don't think we'll see him at all next year, anything like that. So, okay, let's go to Colton Dock. That's a fun one. And Bardo, you're on for Colton Dock. And Jimmy, what did you rate Colton Dock? Just remind us real quick.
I gave him a solid B+.
Got it. Bardo, how do you feel about that B+? Jimmy will have the opportunity to defend himself if we disagree.
I'm actually going to go C+ because, and I think you mentioned it a little bit in your write-up, is that what is he in the NHL? Like, is he Troy Brouwer, or is he, that a big forward that could play physical or can score, or is he Ben Eager? That's more or less a fourth line, physical guy that'll chip in a goal here and there. I don't know what he is yet. So maybe he's somewhere in between, but look, he's got time to figure that part out, and the Hawks have some time to figure that out. But, I like what I've seen so far. I just don't know what he is. And, maybe I'm just going to leave it as, okay, C+, doesn't kill them, and he's not great, but that's fine. He's fine right now.
Okay. What do you think, Shawnee?
I'm going to go with a C. And the reason I'm going with a C, injuries. He's hurt. He's hurt right now. He's been hurt before in the minor or the AHL. If he's going to play that physical game, he can't keep getting hurt. And the availability is your best asset, as any sport will tell you. And he hasn't been available down the stretch here. So I'm going to give him a C.
You would think he has like a brother or something that would, contribute to this.
Also photographed in the article. Weird. I'm going to lean more Jimmy's way here, and I'm going to go solid B. And I think the reason being is that Colton Dock arrived this year with purpose. In the preseason, it was very clear that he was saying, if I'm going to make this team, I need to do it through grit. I need to do it through getting to the net. I need to do it through being physical. I'm not going to overskill guys. I know he's hurt right now, and that's a drag. I still think the jury is out on him. Who he's going to be. Do I think he could be a bottom 6 swinger for the Hawks next year? Sure. In a rebuilding. Again, but the Blackhawks still need to sign people to hit the basement, to hit the cap floor basement. So there are going to be kids that are going to be playing in Rockford. I just really like his attitude. I'm going to give him a solid B for that. And also, but what is his ceiling? I don't know. He reminds me sometimes of another number 28, Ben Smith. And maybe that is his ceiling. At the same time, I think Colton Dach's had a pretty good season. I think he's deserving of a B range.
Yeah.
Great. And Joe, no thanks. Thank you for listening. But Patrick Kane will not be returning to the Chicago Blackhawks.
He means Evander Kane.
Oh
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But to defend my grade, I really put a lot into what Colton Dach did last year compared to this year. In 15 less games in the AHL, he had one less point this year than he did last year. He really upped his game this year in the AHL, and I do genuinely believe that will translate eventually to the NHL. That being said, I do agree with the assessments of Sean and Bard. I do think he's a solid bottom sixer. It just got to be healthy. But I think we're overthinking the Dach comparison, the Kirby Dach comparison. With his injury this year, sure, it was a pretty bad hyperextended elbow, but I don't want to put it on him right now. He's only 21 years old.
Yeah,
22.
He's a kid.
He's a kid, and he hasn't had significant injuries. He's had injuries, sure, but he hasn't had significant ones that have put him out for more than half a season since joining the professional leagues. And last year he was still getting into the AHL, so he had been scratched kind of often. But I think this has been a great first year in the NHL and first full season in a professional league. I think the scoring output needs to improve. Obviously, 25 games in the NHL, only 7 points, but that kind of goes around with a lot of these tweener guys where the point production isn't what we're seeing quite yet. It's just trying to translate to the game, and I'm not overly concerned about his injury, and that's why I gave him a B+. I think he's better than what I even expected.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, I like that. That's a good take. And I mean, it'll be just interesting to see where this goes with him.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all obviously pulling for him. I do like his style. I like that he changed his game to say, this is how I got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Good takes. So we're going to Sean. Sean gets a fun one. He gets Frank the Tank, Frank Nazar the third. Jimmy gave an A. Frankie Nazar, Shawnee, what do we think? Great. Letter grade season.
I agree with the A. I think he's been really good. There's been many nights where he is the best player on the ice. Like, he brings energy, he brings skill. Like, I think his finishing touch needs a little bit more work, but I think he's right there. Like, he's on the cusp of having being a pretty good goal scorer in the NHL. I think in the offseason, if he works on his finishing touch, because there's and I read a stat today, he has the most breakaways percentage on the Hawks, and Ryan Donato is second, and it's not even close. And how rare that is in the NHL to get that many breakaways. Like, Frank Nazar just creates them with his skating ability and his awareness. So I'm really excited about Frank Nazar's future. Nazar, really excited. I give him an A. I agree with Jimmy's assessment.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Joe, how impressed are you guys with Oliver's seed on the ice?
I don't know. I didn't know he was a farmer, but his speed is very good.
Speed is great.
Yeah, but his speed was awesome. I was like, cracked pepper, sunflower seeds? Which sound really good right now. Yeah, just diverting past real quick to Joe's question. Yeah, very impressed with he's an NHL skater right now. His speed is lights out. So very impressed with his speed. Thank you for the comment. Appreciate it, Joe. Going back to Nazar, I think I'm going A as well, Sean, for everything that you said, plus for his body of work in Rockford was absurd.
Yes,
it's absolutely absurd. And I think that a lot of folks, I guess you could say the four of us included, would not have been surprised at the beginning of the year if you said that he would be in Rockford for most, if not all, of the season. He didn't give them a choice. I mean, he was playing so bloody well and scoring at will down there. That's like, all right, bring him up. And we weren't necessarily on the bandwagon of nothing more to prove, but it's like, all right, maybe more to be seen.
Yep.
At a different level. Seeing where he is right now, how fast he is, how much he's learning the game. Sean, great point. Totally agree. The finishing touch needs to work on that a little bit. If he does work on that during the offseason, I don't think there's any reason why one could not disagree with someone who predicts that he has a 25-30 goal season next year.
Yeah.
As a full-time NHLer, if healthy. So yeah, he's a real hockey player and he's going to put up points. Top 6 player. Really excited for the kid. He's coming along nicely. Jimmy, to your grade, anything that we did not mention?
I think one thing that needs to be mentioned, his defensive game is so beyond his years. Like, I would trust this guy on the penalty kill right now in the NHL. He's that good. And I think he has this hustle that you don't see often. I think my favorite play of him recently, it was against the Devils, where he was basically on the red goalie line, and there was an empty net situation, and he books it. I remember that replay. He books it straight to the puck carrier and pinches him at the board and forces him to give up the puck when he could have skated up and gotten a better chance in the empty net. And Frank Nazar just shut that chance down and kept the Blackhawks in the game for another possession. I just, like you mentioned, Andy, we all thought he would just be in a full-time AHLer this year, maybe a couple cups of coffee, but over a point per game in Rockford, and then turning around. And although you look at his base stats and it's like, oh, it doesn't jump off the board, he passes the eye test of flying colors.
Yeah, he's
on both sides of the ice.
He's brilliant. Yeah.
So yeah,
good call. Bardo, any other thoughts on Frank the Tank?
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone's saying, and I think also, and I agree with the grade. I think the one thing also I think about him, this is like hot take city right now, is that I think he's going to get a letter. I think he's going to get an alternate captain down the road.
Like
he plays with a fire.
Next year? No,
I'm not saying next year. I don't. It's too early. But I'm saying down the road in the next couple of years, I think he's going to be an alternate captain, because I think he's got a leadership. He's got a kind of an it factor and energy that, you don't see a lot from people. And he's got a little bit of a fiery personality. I think he's got the type of personality people will gravitate towards him, and he can be a voice in the room. I think he's actually going to get an A at some point on his jersey.
Awesome
sweater.
I like that take. Great take.
That's a good one.
All right, good stuff on Frankie Nazar. Let's move on. I think is it my turn? I think it's my turn. Yep. Sean, you started with Frank. I know. I got to be careful.
Yeah, I finished Frank. Or I started Frank.
Got it. So we're gonna go to Landon Slaggert. I'm sorry, I just listed him as a Golden Domer. I just listed him as a B minus. Jimmy actually had him as a B. Mm-hmm. I have him as a B minus, and
minus for being a Notre Damer. I get it.
No, I mean, great. The fact whether or not he went to Notre Dame, irrelevant. The reason I give him a B minus is I think Landon Slaggert is very expendable. I actually think Landon Slaggert is someone who, if they're going to be making moves in the offseason, his name should be thrown out there quite a bit. I think he's a dime a dozen. I like him. I think he plays really, really hard. 25 points in 40 games in Rockford, I think. Is that what it is, Jimmy, that you had in your article?
Yeah, 39
games. Yeah, 25 points. That's great stat line. 3 points so far as a Blackhawk. That's not his role. His role is the checking forward. He's going to have to be a defensive winger. He's fine. There's not much to his game, but I think a B minus for me is adequate for someone who has a bottom six winger. The older he gets, the style that he plays, I'm not sure he's got the longevity. I don't know if he has. He's fast north south. He doesn't play very well east-west. He's not a scorer, and we don't know much about him defensively yet. Can he be counted on when the games really matter in his own zone as a defensive winger? And if he can't, I don't know how long he'll be around, just because he might just be one of those that just kind of hops around from team to team. It's not a knock on him. It's just kind of who he is. So anyway, seems like a great guy, good hockey player, solid B minus for me. Jimmy, you're up on Slaggert.
That makes sense. I got to see him a lot in Rockford, so that's why I gave him the B. I think with what we saw last year in his limited time in the NHL, and what I got to see a lot with the IceHogs this year, and what we're seeing a little bit with the Blackhawks this year, he's definitively a fourth line NHLer. Mm-hmm. I think he's not gonna light up the score sheet. We're seeing that this year, and it's not like he's like unlucky in the same way Nazar is, where the expected stats aren't matching the stats you're seeing on the screen. I think you're going to get 15 to 20 25 points a year for him if he keeps up this pace. Of course, he could get better, but I think a B is fair considering kind of the expectations he had. I thought he was going to be a full-time AHLer this year.
Mhm.
I thought he'd be a middle six AHLer, but he was immediately a top line AHLer, and he played really well alongside Nazar. And even when Nazar left, he still was very productive in the AHL. And the big thing for him, I talked about, he kind of has the same outlook as Colton Dock, but with just a lower ceiling and a little less injury concern. So that's kind of where I gave him the B. Him and Doc kind of in that same range of player. Doc obviously higher ceiling, but Slag's a little bit, maybe a higher floor. But yeah, I think B, he met expectations. And in some ways, I'd say he's almost exceeding them because I'm surprised how long of a stint he's had in the NHL. But
yeah.
And we're seeing his value in the locker room, and I appreciate always seeing him defend Bedard every chance he gets. He's almost becoming a young Maroon in that role of like, I'm not going to let my guys get pushed around when I'm on the ice, and that's always valuable, especially for a young player.
Yeah. And to be fair, I like your take, and I have not seen as much of him in Rockford, and so that is part of this grade that I was not taking into account. So,
okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
It's all right. Fine. Bardo, I didn't read the directions. Bardo, your take on Landon Slaggert?
Yeah, I'm going back and forth between B minus, C plus. But I agree with everything Jimmy was saying. Like, I don't see much of an upside for him, but he's a fourth line guy. I don't see, I think like what you said, Andy, is that he could bounce around to 5 or 6 teams. Not going to get a lot of points in the NHL, but I give him a lot of credit for kind of like sort of establishing a role as being like going to the defense of Connor Bedard, which is great, and he seems to be well liked in the locker room. But again, I mean, I'm not expecting much from him. This is kind of what I thought he was going to be. So, B minus, C plus, that's fine. I mean, he's average.
Well, and he is young. I mean, he's
maybe he develops into something. I don't expect it, but I mean, I'm not really wowed or impressed by him. I don't really see a high ceiling for him, but he's another guy. And look, if he got traded or they decided to do whatever with him or keep him down in the AHL, I'd be fine with that. I don't feel like I'm missing much with him.
Yeah, got it. And so he's on a deal through 26-27 for $900K.
Yeah, he's 22.
Yeah, so he'll be cheap labor for a little bit.
He's Tyler Mott. That's what he is.
I like that.
That's what he's going to be in the NHL. Like a fourth line guy. Maybe you can play him on the PK. Maybe you can, he could move up every once in a while. He'll play physical, but he's not going to score a lot of points, and that's fine. Tyler Mott's been in the league for 10 years, I think. Bounced around for a couple teams, traded at the deadline. That's fine.
But if you told me that he was going to become a better skater and then also establish himself as a penalty killer, then I would probably grade him a little bit better. But I mean, obviously he's not that just yet. But yeah, he could become that, and that's fine. There's a role for that. People end up getting those guys at the deadline.
Yeah, Tyler Mott's been moved a bunch, so that's what I think he is, and I think that's what he's going to be. And I give him a B.
Give him a B. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right, Jimmy, you're up next on Nolan Allen, who you gave a B minus. Talk to us about Nolan.
Yeah, he started the season in the NHL, and I honestly was blown away by that. He spent all last year in the AHL, and he had a pretty solid year. And I think he was rewarded with a solid year last year of starting the NHL. And he looked okay as a bottom pairing guy. I mean, when you're attached to the hip half the time with TJ Brody, it's hard to look good. And he looked halfway okay when having to be with an F student, And in 43 games, he didn't really produce a lot in terms of production, but he was all right. He was a good skater. His defensive play needed a little bit of work, but it was never horrible. And in 11 games has played for Rockford this year. Well, at the time of this article, he's played a little bit more. What I've noticed most, he's on the PK often, and he's okay on the penalty kill. I think that's something the Blackhawks want to see more out of him, is the ability to be on the penalty kill, ability to improve on the defensive side. And in Rockford, he's very competent. He's very much in my opinion, a very fast rising defensive prospect. We talk all this talk about Kevin Korchinski and Sam Rinzel, Artem Levshov. In fact, Nolan Allen is just another one of those former first-round picks, a Stan pick, the last Stan first-round pick, if you can believe it.
There you go.
And I'm genuinely impressed. And I know my friend to my right over here, the president of the Nolan Allen fan club, there's nothing but joy coming out of the Nolan Allen fan club right now. I know the president is very happy, and he should be. He plays first pairing minutes in the AHL.
Yeah,
and he plays competently when he plays with the Blackhawks. I think he could be a very solid 5-6 guy for a decent amount of time.
Yeah. What say you, Bardo? Great call, Jimmy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm giving him an A-. I mean, I think he's been good. Again, I don't watch Rockford as much, but reading about it, hearing from you, Jimmy, and others, he's playing top line, top pairing minutes, and he's done well there. But when he made it to the big club, I mean, it was a big test, and a lot of people were curious to see how he was going to handle it. I think he handled it well, especially given that, TJ Brody, among others, were his partner, and they were terrible, but he certainly was someone you noticed. I mean, he can skate well. He's not an offensive guy. His defensive game is getting better. And he's also a guy that, I've noticed, and I think I've talked about it in this podcast several times the last few years, is that he just seems to be getting better every single year. So if he continues that, I think there's no reason why he can't be a third pairing defenseman. And look, God forbid there's an injury, I think we would be all okay with him filling in on the second pair. Yeah. But obviously it seems like his future would probably be as a 5-6 defenseman and be solid. That's, if we don't hear his name, and then I think that's okay.
Yeah. If you don't notice him, he's doing just fine.
Exactly.
The deal. Yeah. Sean, we got a B- and an A- here. What do you think?
I'm going to stick with the B-. I think Nolan Allen's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not in the camp of Bardo, where I think he's if we had an injury to the second pair, he'd fill in okay. I think he's a 5-6 defenseman, steady Eddie guy, not going to blow you away with his speed. He'll be responsible in his own end. And so, yeah, he's a complementary defenseman to the offensive defenseman. Like if he was paired with Korchinski on the bottom pairing, like in the future, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
Because Nolan Allen's going to stay home and Korchinski will be a little bit more aggressive in the offensive end. So I'm okay with that. So B- is perfectly fine for Nolan Allen.
Yeah. I'll go B- too. He was great through the new year, and then it started to taper off a little bit. And they headed to Rockford. But I think I think in the beginning of the season, he was one of the more pleasant surprises. I don't think anyone really saw that coming. And he's very reliable. It's interesting, in the luxury of riches on the Blackhawks blue line, the left side is not as strong as the right side. When you've got left-handed shots, you've got Ethan Del Mastro, you've got Wyatt Kaiser, and you have Nolan Allen and Kevin Korchinski. Those are your left-handed defensemen that are kind of the young guns. It's really yet to be determined which one of those will, or which two of those even will establish themselves as, part of that core necessarily. Maybe Korchinski, you think, but he might be a top four, but for a left-handed defenseman, that bottom six pairing defenseman, which Nolan Allen is a defensive defenseman. So who knows where he'll fit in there, but I like him. I think he's been playing great. He's been awesome. And there's going to be some real battles for defensemen in training camp next year to who makes the club. It's going to be really interesting to see that unfold. Good stuff. B- Nolan Allen from Jimmy. Let's move on to Louis Crevier, or as we know him here at the rink as Creever. And I believe, Bardo, you're up. Are you up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am.
Good. Got that right. So B- from Jimmy. What say you?
I would agree with that. I think he's been also, like Allen, a little bit of a surprise. He certainly looks better than he looked like a tree stump last year. This year he actually looks a little bit more confident. Albeit, look, he's still playing with garbage on his other side, but look, I've seen him, positionally use his size pretty well. I think he's definitely gotten better defensively, chipped in a little bit offensively here and there, but he's definitely not a top 4 guy. I think that's pretty obvious. Would I want him paired with Nolan Allen? Probably not. And I think that eventually they're going to probably have to choose between the two of them. But he's fine for now. And I like the way that he's progressed, at least from last year to this year. So given that improvement, I'll agree with the B-.
Okay. Pretty good. What do you think, Shawnee?
I'm giving him an A.
Whoa!
A, yes. He's a 7th.
Not an apologetic A because you can't pronounce his name right?
No, he's a 7th round pick.
That's
you
true.
expected nothing from this guy.
Yep.
Nothing. He played in 24 games last year, like you said, Bardo. He looked like Victor Svedberg out there. And now this year, he looks like a competent 6th, 7th, 8th defenseman in the NHL. It's not like he's terrible out there. I think he's exceeded, 7th round guys aren't supposed to make the NHL, right? I think he's exceeded all expectations when it comes to what we actually thought for Luis Crevier in terms of his future. He's played in 30 games this year.
Yeah, you can say,
him out.
Exceeded
Calling for him over TJ Brody and Alex Martinez. They were begging for him or Nolan Allen to play. I think
he's the Isaiah Pacheco of the NHL, 7th round pick.
Yeah. Yeah, I honestly think for where he was drafted and how much he's improved from last season to this year, an A. He exceeded all my expectations.
Love it. That's great. I am going to go B+. And the other reason for that is, who would have thought that Crevier would be jumping up in the rush as a player? And he's been doing that at the NHL level. He's been getting in there. He's pumped in a couple goals. And he's been more active. He's got a great stick. He's starting to figure out how to use his body. He still doesn't seem that strong yet for his size. I mean, he is 23. He's 6'8", 225.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a giant of a man, but slender for 6'8". So I would love to see him add a little bit more physicality to his game. But Sean, to your point, I really like that take on exceeding expectations for where he is. That's good stuff. Jimmy, on your B- for Crevier.
I mean, I think you all kind of covered it. The only reason I just didn't go higher is just his upside doesn't look great when asked to play a few more minutes than he usually does on that bottom pairing. He gets exposed pretty often. But as you mentioned, he's 6'8", and I think this is the year he figured out, oh yeah, I'm 6'8". I should do something about that. And he's starting to figure that out. He's using his size efficiently. It's just, I don't want to go over B- because kind of with Reichel and Soderblom, it's like, you had a horrible season last year. I can't let that rose-tinted goggles of being so much better than last year, take me off the guard. And he's been a fine bottom pairing guy, a top pairing guy in Rockford when he's down there. He's not going to light up the score sheet. He can get some goals on the rush, but he's not a scorer. He's a fine defenseman right now. He's a little bit older.
Isn't he one of the only 7th rounders to have a goal?
He was the first in this post 2020s 7th rounder to get a goal.
Yeah.
So
A for that too.
I'll give you that, but I try to think when I was giving these guys, I'm trying to think who's going to be an effective player years down the line and what is he now. He is 23. He's a little older compared to the rest of the defensive prospects. So I don't know if he has further upside to be found. I'm just a little more concerned. And if this is the upside, I'm not blown away. So that's why I gave him a B-.
Yeah, but
he's the same age as Taige Harding, who just signed today.
Well, but I grade. Let me be clear. My grade is only based on this season, from the development from this year to last year. His potential, obviously, is not top 4, and I'm not saying that. But as far as what he is and what he's doing right now, he's an A, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
I'm going to give you that
7th round pick. Amazing. So in the modern draft era, I know we haven't done trivia in a while, but I'm just going to throw this out there. There was a 7th round pick in 1985 for the Edmonton Oilers, 7th round pick, who went on to play 1,182 games. Can you name that player? He played. Drafted in 1985. Lowe was already winning cups with them. He wore number 16 for the Oilers. He won a cup for them in 1990 when Wayne was gone, and he was their captain in the late 90s and into the early 2000s.
This isn't Jason Smith, is it?
Nope. He wore number 16.
It's not Craig McTavish.
Nope, he wore 14.
I
I just stumbled on this while I clicked on a 7th round thing, and it just like showed up with most games of a 7th rounder.
Esa Tikkanen?
Nope.
Oh,
All right.
don't say it.
Don't say it? Okay.
Don't say it. Let's
Folks,
figure this out.
trivia question is most NHL games played by a 7th round draft pick. This guy
And
was
yes, Eric, we know you'll get it right.
Yes. This guy was drafted in 1985 by the Edmonton Oilers. He wore number 16. He played 1,182 games.
It's not Joe Murphy.
Nope, but he 1 point was the Oiler captain when Messier was gone.
Did he
was-
play with any other team?
Gary Curry.
No.
No. God, who wore number 16?
This is Bard. When you find out who this is, you're gonna go, oh.
It's not
It's
Bernie
not
Nichols.
Pisani, is it?
What?
Pisani was
No.
that's not him.
It's not Bernie Nichols because he was already in the Rangers.
See if I can find any stats on him.
Not
Not a big scorer. Played for the Oilers, the Atlanta Thrashers, and the LA Kings, the Phoenix Coyotes, and the Pittsburgh. Ended his career with the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Oh, so
Okay.
Yeah. His largest goal output, he had a 20-goal season in 1992. He was a check-in center.
It's not Mark Lamb, is it?
No, but you're on the right track.
What year was he with Pittsburgh?
2003, 2004.
Ooh.
All right.
I have no idea.
Kelly Buchberger.
Oh, damn it. Damn it.
Hard fell through the image.
Oh, shit.
He's fallen down the rows of the United Center. He's tumbling towards the ice.
Yes.
Right.
Kelly
We
Buchberger.
stumbled upon trivia, and we'll be back with more trivia in our next show with some good
That was
ones that
great.
can just kind of manifest. All right, we're up. I think we're Sean now. Is that right?
Mhm.
Yep.
With Ethan Del Mastro, who Jimmy had as a B-.
I'm gonna go with a B+. I think Del Mastro, his passing ability, his physicality, he's really improved from last year to this year. I know he was an AHL All-Star last season, but like even in his little cameo that he made last year in the NHL, like he looks so much better. He looks like he belongs.
Yeah.
Like they're gonna have a really tough time with the defensive future core going forward. I think Ethan Del Mastro is making that difficult for them because I don't think they thought he was going to be as good as he's turning out to be right now. And he's physical, like he'll lay the body, he'll go in the corners, you know. So I'm gonna give Del Mastro a B+.
Got it. I like it. I'll go solid B. And for similar reasons. I mean, I think he had a good stint in Rockford when he showed up for the first time this year in Chicago. He definitely looked much more physically developed. I mean, he is a rock. I mean, he's a moose. He's going to start laying the hammer on some people. He's going to be a physical left-handed shot defenseman. Was starting to put some shots on. He's getting a few points here and there. He's learning the game. He hasn't played in the last couple games, which is too bad. We'll get into that with the next guy in a minute, but I'm going to go a solid B for Ethan Del Mastro. Jimmy, talk to us with your B-.
I think the biggest thing with the B-, I know he's been very physically smart in both the AHL and NHL this year. He looks like he could be a future penalty killer. My big thing, and I worried about this, his scoring kind of dried up this year. Like last year in Rockford, he had 37 points in 69 games. Like he was a scoring defenseman last year in Rockford to go along with his really good defensive upside. This year, it feels like his defense has gotten better and his physicality has gotten better, but like his scoring touch kind of like I don't want to say disappeared, but just waned. It's like he had 42 games this year in Rockford, not a single goal. He's got 2 goals in 22 games this year, Chicago, but only 5 points so far. So that's kind of what brought his grade down for me. I worry that his scoring touch isn't going to be refound. And if he can, it'd be great. I don't think it's gone forever. He's still only 22, but that was the big striking thing that worried me a little bit when grading him. It was like, okay, where's that scoring touch? He had 7 goals last year in Rockford. This year with both Chicago and Rockford, you only have 2, and about a similar amount of games. So that's what gave him that B-. His defense and physicality is fantastic. If he can't score more, I don't see him going anywhere above the bottom pairing. And gotcha. I'd love to see him as a second pairing guy, but if he can't score, I don't know if he can get above that bottom pairing.
Good call. Bardo, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with a solid B. I think, for everything you guys have said, he's been really good defensively and physically. He's come in, he's looked a lot better and matured from last season. I hear you, Jimmy, about the offense. The good news is we've seen him do that. It's not like we're, and maybe this might be just a sophomore slump or just getting, trying to focus more on the defensive side, and maybe the offense will come back in a year. But I definitely see upside as a second pairing defenseman. I think he'd be, fit nicely next to Rinzel or Levshinov. So, but I would give him a B. I think he's been solid. So, and I do wonder why he's been scratched so much. So, yeah.
Got it. Well, I have the distinguished honor of talking about our next defenseman, and maybe the reason why EDM is being scratched, and I have a theory behind it. Wyatt Kaiser, ladies and gentlemen, who Jimmy has as an F. Really tough grader. Now, none of us are really on the, I don't know. I'll use I language. I'm not on the Wyatt Kaiser fan bus either, necessarily. Will I give him an F? No, I'm going to give him a D. I'll give him a D. In the sense that, it's hard to believe those defensemen who have played more than 50 plus games for the Blackhawks this year. Of those, Connor Murphy and Wyatt Kaiser have the best plus minus, which is weird. Wyatt Kaiser is only a -2. However, Jimmy, to your point, I'm going to still give him a D because he's actually played really well the last few games for Wyatt Kaiser. Ethan Del Mastro, I honestly think he's being scratched right now, conspiracy theorist, whatever, to give Wyatt Kaiser more games down the stretch to move him in the offseason. I think Wyatt Kaiser is the odd man out in this group, or I hope he is. I would really hate to see the Blackhawks send down to the AHL next year to start the season or move on from an Ethan Del Mastro or a Nolan Allen in favor of Wyatt Kaiser, because in my opinion, he may have already hit his ceiling. I don't know if there's going to be much more to Wyatt Kaiser as a hockey player than what he is right now. I think he'll bounce around a little bit in the league. But there's just is nothing that compelling about his game where he has much of an influence on a hockey game. And for better or for worse. So I'm going to go D. Jimmy, talk to us about your F.
Yeah, I felt harsh giving this, but I put this in perspective of the other young defenseman he's being graded alongside. He has almost 100 NHL games. He doesn't have a skill set that stands out above the rest. Like, he's not physical in the way that EDM is. I feel like Nolan Allen's a more smooth skater. He's not an incredible distributor. He has 8 points this year with the Blackhawks, and weirdly enough, he was worse in Rockford than he was in Chicago this year. He was genuinely bad in Rockford. Like, they gave him first pairing minutes often, and it was not a good choice.
Yes, I don't have that perspective.
Yeah, it really wasn't. Even in the AHL, he's not a top pairing guy. He's he just it's frustrating talking about him because it feels like he has a lot of support in the fan base, and like you just have that feeling like, oh, come on, let's keep those good game performances. Like, these last couple games, he looked all right, but he can never sustain them. He can never have a couple weeks of decent play, and when he's bad, he's awful. I think about this last game against the Devils where he was paired with Levshinov for a period. And after that period, Sorensen's like, okay, I got to split him because Kaiser can't work with Levshinov. Like, Kaiser just doesn't work with him. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I had to give him an F. He's somewhat better than last year, but that's not saying much. He's not good in Rockford. With the Blackhawks, he's not great. I don't trust him when they pair him with the young guys. Like, I think in practice today, they had him with Levshunov on the third pairing, and I don't like that pairing at all. I think that's the big thing for Kaiser. He's a pairing nightmare. I don't think there's a guy on the defensive core of the Blackhawks, old or young, that mesh well with Kaiser. I don't think he has a partner.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave him an F. I was a little harsh, but it's
no. It's a matter of opinion, matter of perspective. Well, what do you think, Bardo?
I'm going to go D, also because I've seen a little bit of decent play from him recently and sprinkle here and there. But I do want to take a little bit more of a forward-looking approach on him because I think right now, I think there's a good chance they're playing him a lot with an eye towards trading him. One thing I would say is that depending on who the new coach is, I would like the new coach to kind of look at his tape and say, and let's assume that it's going to be somebody who's experienced, that we all respect and all that, and looks at it and say, can we make something out of this so we don't have another Gustav Forsling 2.0 on our hands? Like, can he be coached up in any way, shape, or form? I don't know what that means because I never played pro hockey, never played ice hockey, but is there something to this? And if they say, you know what, it's probably going to take another 3 years, then dump him. If it's if it's something that he said, you know what, give me a training camp and I could work on this kid and I can make it right because I see something in this kid. That's my only fear. And maybe it's just the PTSD of Gustav Forsling, who we were having probably a similar conversation about him. Yeah. And it's just, he bounced around and then all of a sudden became a Norris finalist and was great in the postseason.
If you're going to move on from one of these defensemen, you're taking a chance no matter who it is.
Fair. But I still think I think he's a pretty good skater. And I'm not even sure if we thought Gustav Forsling had anything good. At least we see some things, albeit decent, on Wyatt Kaiser. And I just don't know if a new coach can unlock anything more with him. I would say I doubt it. I'm just throwing this possible scenario out there.
Yeah. What do you think, Shawnee? Good call, bro.
I'm going C-. I think an F is too harsh. I think some of that plays into the fact that Ben Pope pumped his tires a little bit 2 years ago. And I think there's some
media is still pumping his tires.
Built into it. Like Ben Pope pumped him up, and we all knew that the hype wasn't warranted. And I think there's a little disdain for that in there. I will agree with Jimmy. The couple of IceHogs games I have watched, he has looked terrible down there. But I wonder if it's just his game is not made for the AHL. Like, I wonder if because he's a faster player, because of his skill set, that he's built more for playing in the NHL. That's the only thing that gives me pause. And I agree with you, Bardo. I don't want another Gustav Forsling where he washed out here and then he washed out of Carolina before he made it in Florida. So I think it's between Kaiser and Del Mastro, who one of those guys are going to be the odd man out. Ben Pope wrote about it earlier. They didn't really have a spot in the lineup. I think they're trying to hopefully get something out of Kaiser down the stretch to find out if he has that spot, because I think they're sold. I think they understand what they have in Del Mastro. I think they're just trying to figure out if there's more to Kaiser's game. So I'm going to give him a C-. I think an F is just too harsh, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Good call. So we've gone through the rest of the those are the Rockford / Chicago guys who have played back and forth. Really good takes on all of them, guys. Jimmy has a lot more to his article on the Rockford IceHogs. A lot of the players that perhaps the regular Blackhawk fan, myself included, know who they are, but at the same time have not really been paying attention to their game. And so make sure that you see the article because Jimmy's got a lot in there. Jimmy, is there anyone who and I just want to give you the floor to comment on a couple minutes on some of the grades, maybe take a few players or two, guys that are prospects that had pretty good years in Rockford that you could possibly see maybe making a jump at some point, or at least seeing some time with the Blackhawks where there's injury time? Are there any that you're kind of going, maybe this won't work out? And then are there any seasoned vets in there? I'm trying to think of names like a Cole Gutman, names like Marcel, what's going on with him? What's going on with Zach Sanford, who seems like he's had a good season in Rockford. Can you point out maybe 3-4 dudes that maybe we should take notice of?
Well, I'll start with two guys that probably have actually graduated from my grade because they both now have over 10 NHL games. Korchinski and Artem Levshunov both had A's. Levshunov, obviously, he had such a slow start. I feel like he's probably had the most interesting prospect season in Blackhawks recent history. But I think since the coaching change to Mark Eaton, I think Mark Eaton's coaching style has rubbed off on Levshunov really well. Mark Eaton, as we know, is a Stanley Cup champion. He was a bottom pairing D-man on those Pittsburgh Penguins. Mm-hmm. And I think Eaton is getting some of his skill set brought onto Levshunov, because Levshunov since December has just really shot up. He had a really tough beginning of the season thanks to missing training camp and the beginning of the AHL season with his foot injury. But he's in the NHL now, and I mean, we're fawning over the kid.
Yeah,
he's so good. He's so damn good. I think, what is it? He's at 10 games, 5 points, still looking for that first NHL goal, and he's been so close how many times? And I got to show love to Korchinski. I feel like with Levshunov's season, he's been the odd man out in terms of defensive prospects, but he's an AHL MVP. I mean, all-star MVP. His first stint in the NHL back in December, he looked great despite not putting up any points. His last 2 games, I know it's been rough. He's over-aggressive in the neutral zone, and that leads to odd-man rushes. But I'm not going to put that against him. He's had a great year in the AHL. The difference between this season and the previous season is night and day. He looked awful his rookie season with Chicago, and this year he genuinely looks so much better, and I think he has trajectory to go up. Now, to look to the rest of the Rockford roster, it's a lot of veteran top 6 players who are great. I mean, I'm talking Cole Gutman, Zach Sanford, even Andreas Athanasiou, and Brett Seney. Like, those guys got all A's and B's. I mean, they're blowing the doors off. That top six is great. It's genuinely carrying the Rockford IceHogs into the playoffs, and it's deservingly so. The rest of these young guys, I'm going to name 3 names: Paul Ludwinski, Gavin Hayes, and Marcel. They're struggling. I gave a D+ to Marcel. I think I gave Paul Ludwinski a C- and Gavin Hayes a C. It's been a tough season for them. It just goes to show how different guys can develop. Like, you had Slaggert, Doc, and Nazar blow off the doors. Then you have Hayes, your Marcels, your Ludwinskis, guys in their first or second full AHL season, and they're still trying to find it. I think for those guys, they just need to find their scoring output, especially Hayes. Hayes only had, at the time of this article, Hayes only had 8 points in 40 games. This guy lit it up before he was drafted, and that's what he was drafted for. It just hasn't translated in the AHL ranks. Good thing about these guys, though, they don't take penalties. Well, Gavin Hayes doesn't take penalties. Marcel leads the team in penalty minutes. That's the reason he got the D+. He's big, he's physical, he's 6'4". He's just struggling with with keeping his head on his shoulders and avoiding penalties. Gavin Hayes, I think, only has 4 all season.
Yeah,
he's the best, I think, of the current young forwards on the roster. Even though his scoring output isn't there, it's just he's very, very seasoned. And also, one last word: Sammy Savoie. B+. I think he's the best young guy there still. I gave him the Andrew Shaw stamp of approval. He's a pest. Like, my favorite highlight of his was 2 weekends ago. They were playing in Grand Rapids. He scored a goal, made it 2-0, and immediately started barking at the crowd, slamming on the boards. Like, he was letting him know, like, he's an energy guy. And I mean, this guy would be a perfect Andrew Shaw, 4th line, piss you off kind of player. So, last person on the list, I'll finish very fast. Drew Comesso, the goaltender, huge A. He came back from injury in February, and he's blowing the doors off the walls. I mean, he started all but like 1 game. I think he has like a .930 save percentage in like the last 12. He's, in January, I would give him a C+. He had a sub 900 at that point, but in my article, the first 9 games following his return, Save percentage, 954. Like, I genuinely think, we talked a lot about Soderblom. I genuinely think you could see Soderblom walk out the door and have Drew Commesso start next year in the NHL, or have Brossoit be the 1A, 1B with Spencer Knight, and then Commesso is ready to go.
And we're forgetting about Brossoit. He's still don't really know what we've got with that guy.
Still don't know. Yeah. I would hope that he comes back next year.
He's got a sweet mustache in the team picture. That's about it.
I'm hoping, since he has one more year left in his contract, they let him rest the rest of the season just to fully recover, because his injury was a torn MCL, which is, if you fully repair it, it's a 4 to 6 month. Think JJ McCarthy. It's a full 4 to 6 month recovery period, and he got that in September. So I think they got to March and like, you know what, the season's lost. I don't want to mess with your MCL. Let's keep you off, and let's have you ready next year.
Yeah,
that's what I'm hoping. That being said, I love Commesso and his season. It's been great. If he can continue this going into the rest of the season in the playoffs, I think he could single-handedly steal a 3-game playoff series against the Wolves. I think it would be Comesso's series. So that being said, top 6 in Rockford is good. The young guys, other than Savoie, are kind of rough. You know, they're still learning. Savoie looks like he can be an NHLer. Levchinov and Korchinski had great years in the AHL, and it has now started to translate into the NHL, especially Levchinov. And Commesso, I think he's a quality backup NHLer as soon as next year.
Gotcha. Awesome. Great takes, Jimmy. Appreciate that, man.
Thank you.
Good stuff there.
To all my friends in Rockford and all the players I get to talk to whenever I get a chance to. I'm sorry if I didn't get a chance to talk about you. I mean, I will never forget you, the mayor, Jerry Mayhew, or my good friend Jalen Lipen. I love you guys. I'm sorry I couldn't get.
I'll shout out Colin Felix, who deserves an A+ for being a UMass alum.
Oh yeah, and he's their fighter, man. He's an energy guy. I love watching him play.
Love it.
That's awesome.
And Sean's cousin, Kevin Fitzgerald, having a great year. Not related, for all those in the audience.
We're all related.
All the Fitzgeralds are related.
The other side of the Fitzgerald family.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, great stuff, Jimmy. Thanks so much. And great work on that article. And again, folks, like we said, you know, if you haven't seen it yet, please do. One other topic, we got another question from Joe, and then we're definitely going to close shop way over an hour tonight. Let everyone get some rest. But any thoughts on Ryan Green? Ryan Green, prospect, second-round pick for the Blackhawks, who's headed to the Frozen Four with Boston University. Ryan Green's a really good hockey player. Obviously, you're asking a very biased I love Ryan Green as a prospect. I know it's been no secret to anyone. Really, just a natural center. I mean, I think that we talk about guys that might be able to play center, but they've got a lot of offensive punch. Green's a center. That's who he's going to be. He's probably going to be a third or fourth line center in the NHL. Expect him to be part of the penalty kill. He'll chip in offensively where he can. He's not going to be a scorer, though, but he is a very east-west, play is always in front of him type of pivot. I think he could be a very useful pro. His ceiling offensively will be limited, despite being the top scoring center at Boston University. That probably will not be his game at the next level, but he could be a really good pro. He could be a pro. He's certainly in the right college system to do it. This will be his third Frozen Four in a row.
So maybe Dave Boland?
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna throw out a comparison that style, will he be Dave Boland? God, wouldn't that be great?
That'd be perfect.
Nice.
Yeah, but it'd be that kind of style of hockey player would be kind of what we're looking at with Ryan Green. And best of luck to him and Aiden Thompson, as BU and Denver both back in the Frozen Four.
I want to give a shout out before we go away. The Penn State hockey team, the Nittany Lions there. 15 years ago, they were an ACHA hockey team, and now they're in the Frozen Four for the first time. And this season, they were 0-8 in Big Ten play at one point during this season. And they had their hot streak that carried them all the way to the Frozen Four. So shout out to Penn State.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Great stuff. Well, great. Well, hey, thanks, guys. Thank you all. Great commentary on all the letter grades and the analysis on the Hawks and Rockford. Jimmy, great article. Good to see you, folks. We'll be back next week. The Hawks play tomorrow night late.
Colorado. Yep.
Yeah, Colorado. I think, what is it, a 9:30 Eastern start?
9:30 Eastern. Yeah. So you figure 20
to
30 minutes later than that. The game,
especially if it being on TNT, they're going to take their time.
Yeah. So don't worry about wins and losses, folks. Worry about the development of the players. And I think that, with Nazar playing how he's playing, with a lot of the draft picks in there now, with Rinzel and Moore now part of the mix, something's starting to feel a little bit different in terms of we're starting to see what's going to happen here. And the wins will come in due time, but this could be a very exciting team heading into camp next year, depending on what they do in the offseason. So, all right. Well, good to see you guys. And folks, thanks for listening. On behalf of the author of the piece that we just went over, Jimmy O'Malley, the Bard, and Sean Fitzgerald, I'm Andy Campbell. Take care, everyone, and have a great night.